Welcome to URI Wellness, where we explore all things health and self-care. Whether you're seeking mental clarity, physical fitness, or insight from students like you, we've got you covered. Welcome back to the URI Wellness podcast. I'm Olivia, and I am here with Maddie and Abby today. They're co-presidents of the URI Eating Concerns Advisory, also known as URIECA. They talk about eating concerns and they spread awareness about eating disorders. So can you guys tell me a little bit more about URIECA and what it is?
Yeah, totally. So I'm Abby. Thank you again for having us today. URIECA is a support group here on campus. We are a peer support group, so it's by students, for students. We're discussion and education based. So URIECA, our little format is we will have one of our executive board members give a presentation on a eating or body topic that we think is prevalent, and then we have a discussion on it. We have discussion-based questions to, spark some conversation. We also participate in a lot of health promotion events. We always go to Flourish, we always go to the B5K, things like that, just to spread awareness on the prevalence of eating disorders in college campuses. But it's also not just for people with eating disorders. If you're a friend of someone with an eating disorder, if you're interested in learning a little bit, we're open to all eating concerns. So yeah.
And as you were saying before too, it's important for people of different majors as well, like dietetics and nutrition, just to understand those different eating concerns and things that are out there.
Yeah, totally. We are dietetics majors, the two of us, and so are a lot of the members. But, this is open to everyone. If you're interested in mental health, obviously this is a super great place to be. But it's also important to us because we'll be practicing in the future, and we hope to make sure health isn't weight-centric.
And I think another thing that I love about this group is that it was made by students for students. So having that very inclusive boundary makes it a very open environment. So there's really nothing that we can't talk about in our group. And I think that's what makes it really special. And it just has a very big effect on our students.
Yeah, we think it's important to be vulnerable, and it's important to feel seen and heard in your experiences. You don't need to, like I said, have a diagnosed eating disorder to just come and have a chat. There's plenty of behaviors that could be talked about and should be shed light on. So.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well, talking about those behaviors. But before that, can you guys tell me why this club is important to students?
Just the fact that it was created by students, it really gives people a space to just feel heard. But it's also important because of the world we live in. There's so many things on social media that we all see every day, and it's just okay, why is nobody talking about this? So it's since we are dietetics majors, it's kind of part of our role to talk about these things and other health trends or food trends going on. So it's a pretty fun topic to just really see what's out there. And
yeah, it's super empowering. Like I said, the education part at the beginning, we know knowledge is power. As we learn these things and get to debunk the things that we hear, it feels good to spread light to things that people can be shy about or be embarrassed about when this is one of the most common mental health disorders that there is. A lot of these behaviors go under the radar, and I think it's super important to talk about.
Yeah. One of the things that's kind of amazing for me to watch is how much growth there is in being vulnerable within our group. It's for example, I've seen people in our group just start off being shy, and then it's you watch them grow in themselves, just having more peer support and just learning more about themselves through these things. So I think that's really cool.
That's amazing that there's this safe space for those people out there and for anyone who wants to just learn about it too and become more knowledgeable. So yeah, I guess going off of that, can you guys give me an overview of some common eating disorders, especially for our demographic and for college students?
So the college demographic is one of the most prevalent places that you'll see eating disorders. In this age of social media, it's given a lot of people disordered body image. So that's something that you'll commonly see is people will use food to manipulate their body size, which is, it's normal. We all think that, when in reality, listening to our body is always super important. We are born with these intuitions of what our body needs. Our body tells us what kind of foods we need when we need them. So I think that the body dysmorphia part is super important to address. Something that we often talk about is things like orthorexia. So that is an obsession with healthy eating and purging through exercise. URI has super great sports teams, so a lot of the times, especially with women, there will be some sort of body manipulation through sports, and that's something that's worth talking about. It doesn't need to be, something diagnosed to be concerned. And then something else that we see a lot is something called drunkorexia, which is the decrease in intake throughout the day in order to become drunk faster or more drunk later in the day, which is super, super dangerous. Our bodies are meant to eat 3 to 6 meals a day. Things like that can lead to some pretty catastrophic, what is even the word for that?
Consequences.
Yeah, and it's something that is just so normal for us. So those are some of the types of things that we try to combat and we try to make people think about because we talk about them like they're normal.
I also feel like one of the other, at least for me as a freshman coming in, one of the major things that we talk about is the stigma around college weight gain, because we are coming in as very fresh, young adults, but it's you're physically growing from your child body into a full functioning adult. Of course things are going to change. Of course certain things might not fit, but that's okay. You're meant to grow. Everyone talks about the freshman 15, all that kind of stuff, but what they're not considering is weight gain isn't necessarily a bad thing, obviously depending on what your mental state is, how things are going, but it's if you're fueling your body as it needs, you're listening to your hunger cues, you're doing joyful movement, all that kind of stuff, you're mentally doing okay. There's no shame in that at all.
Totally. Yeah. I think that something that is really important to our core and our message is that health can be at any size. We believe in the separation of health and weight, so things like body dysmorphia and things like the manipulation of body size for health purposes, we challenge people to think about what that actually means and what that actually looks like, because health can look many different ways for a lot of different people. So
Yeah. And you mentioned hunger cues and joyful movement. Can you tell me more about that and what that is?
Yeah. So I feel there's a lot of pressure. At least that I see. It's okay, you have to exercise 7 times a week, for this amount of time. And it's you have to eat this now and then all that kind of stuff. But I think it's also just adapting your mindset around your health. So it's okay, I'm going to work out, and that workout could look different for everybody. I'm going to go for a little walk just to get some sunlight, get some fresh air, because I know it's going to make me feel good. Not the mindset of, I have to go run 20, 100,000 miles right now because I ate a donut. You know what I mean?
Right.
People have very all or nothing mindsets around it, but it's taking a small action for yourself to provide you some sort of benefit. And then the hunger cues thing is it's okay, if I'm feeling hungry, I'm going to eat. It's just kind of it sounds silly to say that to yourself, but it really is as simple as that. And also just gentle with yourself. Our bodies are way smarter than we give them credit for. It's telling you something, it's okay to have a snack.
Yeah. If it's silly, but if you think about it, one of the first behaviors that we learn as newborns is to cry when we're hungry. We ask for help. Our bodies tell us when I cry a lot when I'm hungry. But our bodies tell us these things, and it would be a shame to just not tune into that and listen to that. And it's the same thing with joyful movement. You can have a regimen of exercise, and that might feel good for you, but one day you might wake up and you don't feel like it. There's no point in pushing yourself past barriers that your body tells you. You know what I mean? It's okay if that's what feels good for you and that doesn't hinder your wellness, but it's also okay to skip it sometimes, and it's okay to tune into that. That's being intuitive is really one of our biggest goals for people, is to listen to your body.
Yeah. And I think that's honestly one of my favorite things about starting this major and starting this group is, like, I found that so much in myself. I've really adapted the mindset of, like, I'm so lucky that I get to move every day. Kind of, like, shifting your mindset towards gratitude that you get to move. And it's like, okay, I'm exercising because I feel good when I do it, and it's something good for me, rather than because I have to look a certain way, or I have to so I could eat this.
I love that, like, just assessing your motivation, and, like, that mindset shift can be so important. Healthy on a mental health perspective as well. So
Right.
Yeah, so continuing with eating disorders, I wanted to talk about small behaviors and habits as well that can be a concern but may not be a full, like, eating disorder. Can you speak more about those habits and things?
One of the biggest things that causes a disconnect between your mind and your behaviors is having food stigma and food guilt. You know, having, like, these preconceived notions about food. Like, one of the first things that we learn in nutrition classes in this department, which I'm so grateful that they have this outlook, is that all foods can fit in any diet. Like, there's no reason to cut out your favorite foods because everything can fit, everything has its place. And one of the biggest things with having these stigmas is the binge restrict cycle. So we know now, like, being educated in this, that as you restrict certain foods, the cravings for those things will come back like 10 times as worse. One of the biggest things is carbs. People think that carbs are going to make them gain weight, and, you know, obviously people think that weight and health are interconnected. But we learn in class, carbs are brain fuel. Carbs are what makes us work, and
Yeah, so we did those pathways. Like,
we did those pathways. Like, we know that this is serious, and you can set yourself up for something really dangerous. Like, the binge restrict cycle is very, very real, and one of our topics in a couple of our meetings has been night eating. If you restrict yourself throughout the day, those cravings will come back to you, and a lot of times those manifest, like, late in the night or after dinner, or, like, you know, this can disturb things like your circadian rhythm. Like, it can disturb your sleep. So I think that, and I mean, you said small behaviors, but this is a pretty big one. But, you know, having those food stigmas are so, so common. And I think it's super important to realize that there's not really such thing as healthy food. There's only healthy eating when you tune in, like, you listen and you honor those cravings that you have. And I mean, I also want to say, like just because you may have a food stigma, this doesn't mean that you have an eating disorder. You can have disordered behaviors and not have a classified eating disorder. Eating disorder classifications are for clinical purposes that will get you the best care that you need, but sometimes you don't need inpatient or residential treatment. Like, you might just need something like our group. Like, you might just need someone to talk to, and you might
shift,
you might need to just be educated on these things. And that's not something to be ashamed of or, like, afraid to be educated. Like, it's power. And
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it is just, like, could be, like, a control thing. Like, some people just really like to, like, have control over every aspect of their life, which is why, like, sometimes eating disorders arise like that, because you can physically control what you're putting into your body, when, and, like, how much. But our, like, eating habits, like you said, like, our bodies are born with natural, like, cues for, like, indicators of when we need to eat, and we know, like, the purpose that food, like, serves us, like, as a human being. So that's just, like, not one of those things that we want people to stress over having control of. It's just kind of, oh, like, someone randomly wants to, like, go get ice cream or something, and, like, you shouldn't have to be afraid of going off of, like, your normal eating patterns or whatever. Like, this is life. Like, we are all here. Like, this is everyone's first time living. So cute. But, like,
we got it.
Like, just live.
Yeah. I mean, I also want to say that it's important to take into account where you're getting your information from, because a lot of these things are coming from misinformation on the internet.
Yeah.
It's very important to be knowledgeable and precise in where you choose to get your nutrition information from, because plenty of people claim to know all these things on the internet, and, like, they're the CEO of nutrition for some reason, and they will come at it with their own stigmas. Everyone has their stigmas about food, but trying to find very unbiased information can be hard, but it is out there. And I mean, we share resources all the time. Like, we put things out on our Instagram. Like, we try to really make it unbiased, because that's where all these things come from, is implicit bias around food and body size. And there are professionals out there who know their things. Like, you can find them. And if people are curious, like, we are always available to give these resources. Like, we try to always be accessible for that.
I was going to say, like, nutrition is a science, obviously, as we know from our major, but, like, that means things are always changing. There is room for growth. Lots of new research is coming out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything you see is backed by that research. And things take time to develop. Like, you need larger sample sizes. You need just time for these things to develop. So I think that's just, like, one really important thing to consider when you are getting your information. I know, like, there's a lot of, like, self-proclaimed professionals, and, like, especially with, like, supplements, specific brands, like, the people...
Consumerism will get you.
That's like a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, the diet industry is the number one.
They make billions and billions of dollars off of you just off of people's vulnerability, like wanting a quick fix in their life.
There's no such thing. If that's another message you can give, is there's no such thing as a quick fix.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be about weight. Like, diets are put out there to make money. Like, I'm sorry to say it, there has been no such thing as someone who has successfully dieted and either kept that weight loss or, like, kept those health indicators, like, in check. Because we're supposed to eat diverse food. Like, we're supposed to tune into that.
Yeah, I think kind of going off of what you said, no one has long-term held a restrictive diet, but I think it's people have held things long-term, but it's a lifestyle change. It's not just, like, a diet. It's, like, just being more mindful of what foods you're putting into your body and their function for you. So there can be long-term lifestyle changes that are very, like, they stick with you, but that's just not, like, a quick fix at all.
Cutting out one food group isn't going to solve the world's problems.
Right, like, there are the food groups for a reason, like, taking, like...
They all have purpose.
Can't just, like, take one away, like, that's gonna... You'll need it from somewhere.
Yeah.
You did mention that you guys have a lot of resources, though, and you post a lot on your Instagram, so I think it's shameless plug time. If you
yes. Yeah, at URI_Eureka, URIECA. But no, we fundraise for ANID. I'm not sure if I said that earlier, but they have great free resources for, like, support groups and free therapy. They have a hotline. They have great unbiased nutrition and mental health information. And we will always plug them on our Instagram. We follow plenty of, dietitians and nutrition professionals and therapists that put out great information for people. So that's something else that people can do is, like, cleanse your feed. Unfollow those crazy, radical, health people, because your body is the only place that's going to give you your information. Like, no dietitian or whoever on the internet is going to be able to tailor that to you if they're just putting this out to the public. It doesn't need to fit with you.
Right.
No diet is going to be, like, perfectly,
equipped for
every person ever. Like,
and that's what's so cool about us. Like, we're all so different, so, like, why do you want to
do this like
exact
everybody
same way
else?
as somebody else? Because we're not meant to look like anybody else. So don't try.
Just don't try. Just don't do it.
I love that message.
Anyways, drop the mic.
Right. And I think, like you said, just, like, evaluating your feed and figuring out what serves you and what's promoting healthy habits over unhealthy habits.
Like, if you know something's going to make you upset after you watch it or look at somebody, maybe, like, we can just eliminate that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you both for joining me on this podcast today and sharing a lot of information.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This has been very fun.
New experience.
We will talk about this anytime.
Just yapping away.
Okay, great. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add or you think is important that you think that we didn't talk about or talk about enough even? Or anything you want to, like,
change or...
I mean, there always will be something
Yeah.
more to say,
Yeah.
but I mean, open up that conversation. Like, talk to your friends, talk to your family, like, challenge your own biases. It's so powerful to learn and to change. So,
Yeah, I agree.
and if you need a place to do that, every other
I was
Tuesday.
gonna You know where to find us. In Fogarty.
In Fogarty Foozle.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, a quick reminder that all information shared in today's podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Thank you for listening to another episode of Rhody Wellness. If you like what you heard today, tune in every Tuesday on all podcast platforms for more. If you want to stay up to date on events and healthcare tips, please follow us at URI Health Promotions on Instagram. And if you have any ideas for future podcast episodes or more social media content that you'd like to see, please feel free to DM us or email us. Until next time, take care and stay healthy.